Hello, everyone. My name is Anne Reno. I'm the head of property for Standard Chartered Bank, Nigeria and West Africa, and also the chairman of the Advocacy Committee for the Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce. One of the cardinal pillars of the Chamber since its establishment in 1977 is advocacy. Being the foremost bilateral chamber of commerce in Nigeria, focused on fostering goodwill and increasing trade and investment opportunities between Nigeria and Britain, we have continued to advocate for insightful sessions on behalf of our members. Join us at the Advocacy Roundtable discussion on eliminating barriers in the Nigeria export process. The date of the event. Hello, everyone.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Segun Akintemi, and I'm the Vice Chairman of the Advocacy Committee of NBCC and the CEO of Page Financials. I'm pleased to welcome you to the Advocacy Roundtable themed Eliminating Barriers in the Nigerian Export Process. I'm particularly delighted to see our council and exco members, our distinguished speakers, and of course, all our esteemed guests from all over the world. Please rise as we observe the national anthems of Nigeria and Britain. Thank you. Thank you. Before we begin, please allow me to state some housekeeping guidelines. First, if the volume is too low, please check your system volume. The webinar is being recorded. Thank you very much. Before we begin, please allow me to state some housekeeping guidelines. If the volume is too low, please check your system volume. The webinar is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce. To comment and have discussions, please use the chat icon. Submit your questions via the Q&A icon. Only these would be answered during the question and answer session. And of course, ensure that you fill the feedback form via the link, which would be shared in the chat section. Thank you for listening. And I would, at this point, ask that you all join me to welcome our President and Chairman of Council, NBCC, Bisi Adeyemi, to give her welcome address. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kitemi. Good morning, distinguished participants. I recognize and welcome members of ESCO and Council present at this webinar. I'm delighted to welcome you to this Advocacy Roundtable themed eliminating barriers in the Nigerian export process, being hosted by our Advocacy Committee of the Chamber. The Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, the NBCC, is the foremost bilateral chamber of commerce in Nigeria and was established in 1977 to promote trade and investment between Nigeria and Britain. The NBCC is affiliated with the British Chambers of Commerce, which gives our members access to a network of 53 chambers across the UK and 71 other international affiliates. Membership of the NBCC is currently about 450 top corporate organizations from across the sectors of the Nigerian economy. I invite those of you on the call who are yet to join the NBCC to commence the process by visiting our website and completing the membership application form. Now to the business of today. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria's non-oil export declined by 39% between over a 10-year period from 6.9 trillion to 4.1 trillion at the end of 2021. Exporters have had to deal with a myriad of challenges ranging from inadequate infrastructure, access to credit, complex documentation, corruption, and cumbersome bureaucracy. All of these constitute disincentives to Nigerian businesses keen on engaging in cross-border and international trade. We have this morning assembled a panel of subject matter experts who will extensively discuss the various barriers to export and collectively proffer practical solutions. It is my pleasure to welcome our speakers, Mr. Mahmoud Hassan, Director of Monetary Policy Department, Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Stanley Evans, MBE, Vice Chair, British Business Group, Dr. Ezra Yakuzak, Executive Director and CEO, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Mr. Stephen Cartwright, Deputy Head of Governance and Networks, Trade Directorate, Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, and Mr. Abba Bello, MD, CEO, Nexen Bank. The moderator for this session is our own, Ms. Anne Reno, who's the head of Property Nigeria and West Africa Standard Chartered Bank, and also chairs the Advocacy Committee. I thank our sponsors this session, Nexen Bank, for their generosity. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention, and I ask you to actively participate during the Q&A session at this webinar. Thank you and have a good morning. I hand over now the proceedings to our moderator, Ms. Anne Reno.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. As we have a global representation on this webinar, a warm welcome to the Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce Business Advocacy Roundtable, which is themed Eliminating Barriers in the Nigeria Export Process. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the introduction and for putting some context to today's discussions by our enabled subject matter expert panelists. I'm indeed honored and delighted to moderate today's session, which promises to be impactful, insightful, and interactive. So on behalf of the patrons, the past presidents, and members of council, I thank you all, our audience online, and we encourage that you post your questions and your comments on the Q&A icon. We will do our best to take as many as possible, but please be assured that any unanswered questions will be collated and responses posted together with the video of today's conference on the NBCC website, so do look out for that. Housekeeping's done. We're clear that we have a very short timeline and we want to optimize today's deliberations. So I'm just going to kick off by introducing our panelists and warmly welcome them to the stage as we go virtual. I'm going to start off with Stanley Evans. Stanley is he was born in England, and he always reminds us that he has born of Irish and Welsh heritage. His career tracks from Posh in India in 2008 all the way to working in Chennai on various missions. Stanley has spent the last 6 years in Nigeria, in Lagos to be precise, working in voluntary and various other capacities, but specifically advising on trade between UK and Nigeria, and was instrumental in restructuring the Black business group in Lagos. So we welcome you, Stanley, to today's webinar. I'd also like to introduce, and I will skip Dr. Ezra Yakusak because I'm not sure he's online, Dr. Hassan Mahmood. He's the Director for Monetary Policy at the Central Bank of Nigeria. And I'm sure that we're all delighted to have him on board today. Dr. Hassan is, in his capacity, coordinates the formulation, design, and implementation of monetary policy, as well as dissemination of monetary policy outcomes. So he has the experience and is able to really speak on some of the issues and barriers to trade. Welcome, Dr. Hassan Mahmood. I'd also like to go on and introduce our sponsors and a great friend, Mr. Abba Bello. He's the MD and the CEO of the Nigerian Export-Import Bank. Today's conversation is really speaking to the barriers in export. So we have the right experience in the room to actually deal with this subject. Mr. Abba Bello is a seasoned banker with 30 years experience in various positions, including working with Unity Bank as an executive director prior to taking on the appointment and role within Nexim. He has been instrumental in quite a number of policy changes and frameworks within the banking sector, and we're looking forward to his contributions this morning. And finally, our dear own Stephen, Mr. Stephen Cartwright. Stephen is a career diplomat and has completed many international assignments, including Hong Kong, Mexico, and has been as the director of DIT. And he's been recently taking on responsibility for Moving Growth Gateway, which is a business support service to help Africa and UK businesses trade and invest. So we warmly welcome our panelists, and we hope you have your glass of water nearby you, you're refreshed, and you're good to go. Right, I'm going to kick off with the questions. And can I ask that all our panelists please put on their videos so that we can see them and they can, and I'm sure that they're really on. I'm trying to see if, right, okay, so I understand Mr. Abba Bello is traveling. He's in South Korea at the moment, representing the country with the Minister of Finance. And it looks like he's unable to kickstart the presentation as had been planned. But to that end, he's ably represented by Mr. Beg your pardon, I'm just getting Mr. Omidiji, that's correct. Mr. Omidiji from Nexim Bank, who's the executive director there, and he will, on behalf of Nexim Bank, promote questions. So greetings to everyone. Nexim Bank, I'm going to kick off with you, Mr. Omidiji. Nexim Bank was established as an export credit agency to provide credits in local and foreign currencies, and to establish and manage funds connected with exports, provide export credit guarantee and insurance. So it's a whole collective of very dedicated resources for Nigerian businesses in the export market. And to date, the Nigerian exporter continues to face barriers and access to funds. So I'd like to sort of kick off with a soft question to say, what interventions have Nexim brought to the sector, and how have you influenced positive solutions in export to date? Perhaps we'll kick off with you. I cannot see a representative from Nexim Bank.
Okay, I'm here.
There you are. Great. Excellent, Mr. Midiji. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Let me first of all thank Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce for organizing this webinar and then for inviting Nexim, to participate. I also bring apology from the MD of Nexim Bank, who is unavoidably absent. He has asked me to represent him. Now, speaking to the issue, as we may all be aware, Nexim is Nigeria's Export Development Bank. We are owned by the federal government through the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Federal Ministry of Finance. Our role is to support the export sector and diversify the economy to grow contribution of non-oil exports to our export revenue. And then we do this, by providing funds and, other risk-bearing services to support exporters, as well as trade, and market information. Now, like the moderator noted, there are, a myriad of problems which is militating against the non-oil export sector, so to say. We all are familiar with the statistics, but until now, we still have the oil sector contributing over 90%, of our export revenue, which creates problems of instability for the country anytime there is shock in the global oil market. Now, what are these problems? They are in various dimensions. It's not only funding that is the problem. We have, issues of production. For those who are old enough, in those days, we used to hear of the Kano pyramid, of the cocoa, in the Southwest in those days and all of that. But we discovered that over time, perhaps also because, we have been used to the oil revenues, investments into other non-oil sectors, have decreased. So our plantations have aged, and there are, so many other problems, coupled with the fact that, even when we produce, we don't add value to our products, which reduces, what we get from the export market. Now, there are issues of quality standards. Several times our products have been rejected in the export market, into problems, that has to do with quality standard, use of, poor packaging materials, and all of that. Now, there are logistics, challenges, even movement of the products, and then even challenges at the port, delays, high cost of operation, excuse me, and all of that. So these are, some of the barriers, to export. Now, what has Nexim done? Now, let me also emphasize that part of why access to funding, by exporters have not been as smooth as it's supposed to be, is that a lot of our exporters, also who more or less in the small scale sector, are, not really able to come up with bankable, proposals. So we have a lot of applications and, processing them to the level when they begin to access funds, sometimes becomes, a problem. So of recent, what we have done to also address that is to, introduce a product which we call Project Preparation Fund. This helps, in the pre-operational phase of a project, for our exporters to put, their proposals together, in such a way that it becomes, bankable. Now, the other thing I would like to talk about is some, financing solution, that we introduced recently, particularly targeted, at the SME sector and then the women, and youth. These are funds that come with special features, because again, a lot of, prospective borrowers, come up with the challenges of collateral and all of that. So some of these, products, come in such a way that we make them a bit more flexible, rather than, demand, for example, for landed properties, and all of that. We also have relaxed the conditions such that some of our SMEs can bring some assets which they have registered in the asset collateral registry, with the central bank, and then use that to support their request for loan. So these are some of the initiatives we have introduced of recent. In other areas, we also are working with other government agencies. We work with SON, for example, with NAFDAC, to address issues of quality standard. We are making efforts, to intervene in the production of jute bags, because particularly for those who export primary products, part of the problem is, the lack of availability of jute bags, to package their products in sufficient quantity. So they now use, polythene bags, which makes the products to grow mold, and all of that. So again, we of recent launched an initiative, to intervene, towards, producing jute bags, so that some of these packaging materials can be available to our exporters. I think I will stop here for now, and then subsequently we'll address other issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tayo Midiji, for that introduction of Nextim, and in particular some of the initiatives that you have taken as an organization towards eliminating some of the barriers we talked about. You talked about project preparation fund, financing solutions that are flexible and with collaterals options in place, and of course the collaboration with NAFDAC. I'm going to come back to you on some of those comments that you have raised, but whilst I'm doing that, I also want to recognize and welcome to the stage our representative from the Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Mr. Aminu Bakim Kasuwa. He's representing the CEO, Mr. Ezra, on today's conference. So welcome, Mr. Kasuwa. We will come to you in a moment. I'm going to move over very quickly to Stephen Cartwright. Just in terms of questions, I want to sort of have a soft soft launch, if you like, into the questions. So I'm going to kick off. The UK government obviously established Growth Gateway in January 2022 to help develop the UK-Africa trade and investment opportunities. And I'm aware that you have started making inroads supporting Nigerian business exports to the UK. We also note from data statistics that a total value of UK imports in 2021 was £490 billion, of which a mere £1 billion, in fact, less than 0.1% of the share of the imports came from Nigeria. Now, this is very disheartening news. Our aim today is to obviously propose solutions to the barriers faced by Nigerian businesses exporting into the UK. Let's sort of start off by understanding the role of Growth Gateway as an enabler, influencer, and advisor. And perhaps, Stephen, you can perhaps use a case study to buttress your point. Thank you. Can we have you on camera, Stephen?
I should be on camera.
Excellent. We can see your hands.
How you can hear me. Great to be here. Thanks for the intro. And really exciting. And although you said you're going to start off with a soft question, there isn't too many challenges of exporting, and that's something we shouldn't shy away from. Clearly, things are in life, and probably the pandemic made it even more complicated. But I would say on the positive note, we are coming out of the pandemic, hopefully slowly around the world. Those figures you just mentioned also indicate to me that not only is the UK a massive market with great potential, but also Nigeria is one of the most important and fast-growing markets in the world. So between us and the great minds on this call and others, we should be able to do better if we can join up our support. Yes, Growth Gateway is trying to help with that process because we recognize that it is really confusing trying to, particularly if you're an SME, where do you start? And part of our customer research, someone said that sometimes they will have 20 windows open on their computer and they don't know where to go next. We're not going to completely solve that, but actually trying to make it a bit easier. And part of the challenge, particularly when you're an SME, is where do I find the information? Before you even think about, is there a market for my goods? What are the barriers? What are the tariffs? How do I find an agent? All of that practical stuff. But first of all, you need to know where to find the information to point you in the right direction. So, yeah, I mean, I have got a few slides that we can put up, but I'm happy just to talk as well. If we put up slide 2, I'm happy with that. But if not, I'll just mention that, as you said, Growth Gateway was launched at the annual investment conference just in January, just a few months ago. And Growth Gateway is there to provide it's a trade and investment support service for African and UK companies. So it's really important that it operates in both directions, trade in both directions. And basically we provide tailored advice, we provide support to UK and African business that want to trade, and much of that is around connecting to UK government programs. And our focus and aim is to achieve not only commercial impact, but also sustainable development impact as well. Growth Gateway partners with other UK programs, links up with those as well to ensure that companies effectively have something of a one-stop shop so that they can provide they can get to the information that they need. If we move to the two slides along, that would be great. That's where I'm talking to at the moment. I'll keep talking. If you move 2 slides along, you can catch up with me. That would be really helpful. And it's about, so those numbers we've seen already, and yeah. So I'm just talking to this slide, just a bit of background on Growth Gateway, but also in the wider context. Obviously, there are a number of trade agreements apart from the African Common Free Trade Agreement. There are a number of other bilateral trade agreements that the UK is signing. We have the economic partnership agreements, and we're really keen to continue to utilize opportunities around that. But the last bullet on the screen, if you can see it, is also talking about the developing countries trading scheme. Now, this is brand new. It's going to be launched properly just after CHOGM in July, probably. And this is about trying to remove tariffs or reduce tariffs significantly for 70 developing countries. And one of the most important opportunities is in Nigeria. Because if we can get greater utilization of the, as we call it, the DCTS, then that will open up considerable opportunities for Nigerian companies to access overseas markets, including the UK. So I'm happy to talk about that again in the future and to give further information to your members. If we just move on to the next slide, then I can just talk about some of the specific things that we do, and I'll give you one case study as well. So it is about providing an easier route, I should say, for export. Providing information. We're building a centralized knowledge base, which means that we're sharing information from other programs and other projects, because information is king, as we all know. So sharing that information is really important. We have an active advice, the inbox that is part of this presentation. Companies can contact us directly. We triage those inquiries and work out what the best source of information is across the UK government, but also linked to private sector institutions as well. Obviously, in the background, there's lots of policy interventions happening through organisations like the NBCC, but also with the UK, the British High Commission work very closely with policy interventions as well, and we work very closely with our DRT colleagues in the British High Commission in Nigeria as well. And as it said on the last bullet point there, it is about joining up services that support export business. Just to give you one specific example, we've been doing a project in Kenya. We've had lots of inquiries from Nigerian companies. One specific project I've been leading in Kenya is in the horticulture sector, and that's been identifying a number of products and derivatives in the horticulture sector, such as avocados, such as mangoes, and others, frozen vegetables, as well as fresh vegetables, and trying to look at how we can increase the market opportunity in the UK. And much of that will be similar challenges to Nigeria. It's about improving quality, cutting down on wastage, improving access to, for example, cold storage, etc., etc. So there are many elements to that, but one of the important things is that it's also links through to looking at opportunities for UK companies in Kenya in that case? So how can we do end-to-end work which links up, if you like, exporters' opportunities from Nigeria with opportunities from UK? And I think that's really, really important. We do this end-to-end work. I'll stop there as an introduction, but really, really keen to pick up during this discussion today. And Growth Gateway is there to support businesses from Nigeria right now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Stephen. I'm going to move swiftly on to Dr. Hassan. And if you can please put your camera on, Dr. Hassan. So the CBN has played a number of roles through policy frameworks towards overcoming export challenges in Nigeria. And some examples of those interventions are RT 200, 100 for 100 finance, deposit money bank, FX provisions. I'm just going to sort of open up with a soft entry. How effective would you say the CBN measures and initiatives have been in promoting export trade in Nigeria, particularly in the non-oil sector? Dr. Hassan?
Yeah, I'm here. I hope
excellent.
I'm seeing my video. All right.
I can see. We can see you now. Welcome.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And I also want to express my pleasure to be here and participating in this, particularly bringing in the central bank perspective to the discussions. I think the two speakers have actually dealt with where we are coming from in terms of the barriers to export, particularly around trade and the production and all that. On the central bank side, we are more on custodians of the process of the exports and also managing those reserves for the sustainability of the export process, in the sense that other subsequent export activities will require some funding, some financing, and some access to whatever they came up with to be able to pay or clear their letters of credit or do other transactions. Yes, it's from the two speakers, it is clear that a lot of the problems around export barriers are structural, and those are issues that have to do with what do we have in the first place, what do we have comparative advantage on, what is needed outside there that we need to export, how do we export it, in what forms, do we export it, in what quality, in what standards, just like Nexim touched a lot on that, and what is the return, because the return on that will mean it's sustainable, it's a going concern, and people can continue to do that. That will leave for those that are in charge of that, which a lot of that has been talked about. From our own side, what is it, the central bank one looks at the external reserves or access to FX when it comes to export or export trade financing or even export production itself. And like you mentioned, you already have routine of initiatives in that space to deal with a lot of that. The most important one, which was also moving out of our space, was the export stimulating funding that we did to actually kickstart the production process, because we find that to be a major financing hurdle for exporters to have access to sustainable funding to drive that export. And we had that export financing simulating initiative, which is close to a decade now, where the private sector investors, exporters can access that fund. The funds domicile, the central bank was channeled through the commercial bank. There's a lot of traction in there, a lot of funding has taken place there, and a lot of beneficiaries have also attested to how that has helped them. And the two key ones you also mentioned is the RT 200 that is just launched a few months ago, and the concern there, or what drove that substantially, was the fact that I think the chairman also mentioned it in his opening remark. Our channels of forex inflows is significantly changing. Oil export proceeds is coming as the least on that hierarchy of source of FX inflows. That used to be 90–80% of FX inflow. That has changed substantially now, and we see more of funding or inflows coming in from either remittances or non-oil exports, or other inflows coming in from services. And recently we see more inflows coming in from loans or other foreign capital investments are coming in the form of portfolio investments or FDI. So the emphasis now is, since the proceeds from oil export proceeds is declining substantially, how do we move to other sectors that are more sustainable and also more employment generating and economic growth stimulating in the process? And the supply side is these 4 buckets that I mentioned: exports proceeds, non-oil exports proceeds, remittances, and then you have these other FDIs and FPIs that are coming. The ones that central bank can play, more, impactful role is the side of FPI and FDIs, and also we look at the side of remittances in terms of making the ease of those processes a lot more business friendly, and within the context of that ease of doing business. And why we said that, why we focus on that is the fact that, one, export is private sector driven, or is supposed to be private sector driven, and the central bank is supposed to provide the incentive, the support, and the enabling environment to allow that to prosper. I think on the second speaker also mentioned the inflows we get from our exports proceeds. If I'm not in the fiscal side, I don't know if there's someone from NBCC, but I know in the last 6, 7, 8 months, out of those 6, 7, 8 months, I think inflows from NBCC was just like a month or 2. So that side is completely drying out, and the mention have been made of inflows coming in from remittances. The IMF World Bank gives a figure of 24, 25 billion annually, but that penetrates through the formal sector is less than 5 billion. How do you bring that in so that exporters can also have access to those financing or find that space of business more lucrative? And that was what drove the idea of allowing the commercial banks, merchant banks, or private sector to drive exports. The central bank, through the bankers committee, has given that firm directive with the support of the bank CEOs to push the commercial banks to identify some of these very lucrative export businesses and finance them and monitor them and give them the financial and technical support to drive that process. And through that, we expect a lot of inflow, more than oil exports proceeds, to come in from there, and that will be more even impactful. Don't forget that the backward integration of the oil sector is also very, very low. But when you do the non-oil export, even if it's in services or trade, you see a lot of inclusive growth coming in from that, creating employment, creating sustainability for even our reserve, and also providing cushion for exchange rate management. The other financing project is the P100 that you also mentioned, where we created that bucket of funding every 100 days, a particular amount that will go out to the private sector for new initiatives, startups, or businesses that are export oriented, that will bring in export proceeds, that are employment generating, that are impactful, that are domesticated within the economy, so that you also the raw materials and other inputs and processing stages, including the packaging, all the value chain is being financed through that funding. And we've seen over 3 billion already released in that space. We announced that in every bucket of it. For the RT200, we have also started seeing at the bankers committee of banks also giving a testimony of how they've discovered new businesses, how they're financing that, how that will bring in a lot of inflows into that space. In order not to talk too much, I think that's just what I will say for now, and then we can go through other questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks very much for that introduction, Dr. Mahmood. And I mean, of course, we will, I'm sure we'll get questions in around the FDI and remittance conversation that you've brought to the table, the P100, and of course, RT200, which is obviously gaining momentum as we speak. I'd like to move over and cross over to our esteemed panelist, Mr. Aminu Bakin Kasuma. If you can sort of please come online. You're representing the MD for the Nigeria Export Promotion Council, and it's important that we hear from you. Excellent, there you are. Great to meet you. Fantastic. Thanks very much, and welcome to the session. I'm just going to kick off by sort of asking, there's been obviously various initiatives from the private and public sectors and including the Nigeria Export Promotion Council. How well do you think we have done against the barriers that we've talked about so far? Happy for you to speak for NEPC. Thanks.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me start also by apologizing that my chief executive, Dr. Exra Yakusak, is unavoidably absent due to other engagement, but he has sent his goodwill message. He wish you well, and I'm here to represent him, just like you said. So let me go straight to your question. The barriers to export in Nigeria are enormous and quite challenging. And like my colleagues have mentioned, they have mentioned a lot of them, and some of them, infrastructural, challenges. Some of them are, the policies that are introduced, that sometimes contradicts or take one step forward and take several steps backwards. But on top of that are the major challenges that our exporters face are largely coming from the market access issues, especially the sophisticated markets, the EU and the United States of America. And by this, I'm talking about the technical regulations and the standards that are imposed by these nations on the countries like ours. So on the side of NEPC, we have tried as much as possible to see how we are going to address these issues. One, as you know, the major mandate of Nigerian Export Promotion Council is more or less advocacy, trying to bring other government agencies and stakeholders to bring to the fore, the relevance and the importance of their duties in respect to non-oil export. Now, if you look at what is happening in Nigeria today, the major challenge that our exporters are facing are largely infrastructure issues. Take the issue of logistics. By the time you move, you get an average exporter. Sometimes a 40-foot container carrying 12 tons of hibiscus flower that it meant to be, to reach its destination, let's say in Mexico, in 6 weeks, might end up spending 3 months at a port. Now, what does that mean? It means it leads to so many things. Sometimes the goods will get lost, sometimes, you have default, the exporters cannot meet the time requirement, they cannot deliver in time, which will result to delay in payments, or sometimes even default. That is on the infrastructure issue. Then sometimes on the policy issue, Nigeria, sometimes we have this inconsistency in the documentation and the procedure that is involved. You'll find out that over a period of time, some agencies will introduce 1 or 2 policies that might negate what, these exporters have done. The recent one that we are having issues now is the introduction of the e-invoice and an e-evaluation by the central bank, which has been a major issue to exporters, actually. NEPC is not averse to that policy, but the timing and the timing of the release of that, has really affected. But as I understand now, CBN is undergoing serious consultation with the stakeholders with a view to addressing that issue. And another issue also that is that has become a major challenge to exporters, in Nigeria here, is the issue of sourcing the products for export as we are now, and largely due to some of the challenges that we have, either insecurity or other issues which limit the access, of some of these companies or exporters to really, go to the hinterland and source these commodities. So what is NEPC doing in this regard? Now, to solve this issue of infrastructure decay. Like I said, we have been engaging with the relevant agencies like the Port Authority, NPA, Shippers Council, the Central Bank as well, with a view to addressing these issues. Now we have introduced one major component under the Presidential Enabling Business Environment, PEBEC, being chaired by the Vice President. We call it DEW, Domestic Export Warehousing Concept, where exporters can come together, aggregate their goods, collect their goods, aggregate, make it ready for export. And from there, it will now move to the port directly as a one-stop shop. As I'm talking to you now, we have about 6 DEWs that are coming into operation in various locations. Then, on the other hand, we are also trying to bring to the attention of the implication of Nigerian government agencies that are responsible in negotiation some of these standards, regulations at the international level. Part of the issues that we have is sometimes when we are making our local standards or regulations here in Nigeria, we do not take into cognizance of the international regulations that are being set by the international bodies. And at the same time, we encourage the responsible bodies at the same time to, as much as possible, try to participate so that they can protect the interest of Nigeria. And now with the coming of AFTA, we are pushing very hard to convince these bodies to, to have a uniform regional standard bodies in Africa that will allow the African continent to trade as a bloc with European Union in particular and UK now, and United States of America. So there are a lot of activities that NBCC is doing, in sensitization, advocacy, reaching out to other government agencies, that have these responsibilities as well to bring them to fore so that collectively we can discharge our responsibilities. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Very informative, actually. I picked up quite a few comments that you made, particularly around the introduction of Quebec, which I'm sure quite is fairly new, and and let's just watch the space on that. The collaborations, obviously, with the Ports Authority, the Shippers Council, CBN. I think that's also a very valid point. We will come back to talk to dimension some of these comments that you have made. But one thing that I also think is very crucial to this conversation is the collective of the African community in coming up with the standards that will enable us to be a player on the global platform. And again, these are all, these are some of the ways that you describe your organization's impact. But I think, let me pack my second question and move over to Stanley, Stanley Evans, MBE. So Stanley, I'm just going to pick up from where Mr. Kasuma has just mentioned. One of the key great bottlenecks he mentioned is obviously infrastructure, and within infrastructure, he talked about logistics. He talked and to be precise, the road rail network. So can we have Mr. Evans on, please? Can we have your camera on so that we can
hear? I think, at least I think I'm just
excellent. There you are with your handsome face. Right. So just to sort of pick up on the point around the barriers around infrastructure, around logistics. I'd be interested if you can share your perspective on behalf of the business community in Nigeria on some of the ideas, some of the solutions that we can prefer to this great barrier. Perhaps let's kick off with solutions from you.
Thank you very much, Anne, and hello everybody, and all protocols observed. So first of all, as Anne has said, I was heading up the British Business Group until April this year, and I've been running that in India and here, which is a free-to-join group of British business people, some of whom are based in the UK and other countries, and it's to facilitate and engender trade between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. And I stood down last month, as I said, after 12 years, because I think it was time for me to stand down, and Dr. Amma has taken over. So I now exist as deputy chair for the next year to help and guide us into the new future. So I was based in India for 7 years before coming here. And what I wanted to do, first of all, before I talk about some of the issues that some of our British Business Group members have put forward in terms of problems with export, was just mention India in terms of how they've grown exports substantially. And I think a good example of it is if I tell you, and I don't know how many of the honourable people attending this meeting are aware, that the oldest Suzuki manufacturing plant in the world outside of Japan is here in Lagos, and it's based in Ikeja, and that was opened in 1964. And that's the first time that a Japanese auto or motorcycle or marine manufacturing company opened up anywhere else in the world. And they actually set up a manufacturing plant in Ikeja. And at one point they were manufacturing, with a huge degree of local content, 300,000 units a year. And that was a mix of cars and motorcycles. So that was 1964 going forward. And it still exists. And I think they assemble, but a far lower number now, but they're assembled. The reason I mention that is that when I was in India, I was very honoured to be taken around the Suzuki manufacturing plants there. And they've got 4, so I visited 2 of them. And they are now the largest manufacturer of Suzuki vehicles in the world. And they promoted that and grew it. And one of the policies they put into place was the introduction of an import duty on fully built up vehicles of 198%. That's now been increased to just under 300%. So in effect, there's no point in exporting a vehicle into India. And as a result of that, and this is over a period of years, India now are the 4th or 5th largest manufacturer of motor vehicles in the world. And 52% of the Indian market is actually held by Suzuki, and more Suzukis are made in India than any other country in the world. And if you buy a Suzuki, Hyundai, Kia, and various other vehicles that are left-hand drive, in the UK, for example, all of the Suzukis are made in India. So they've got an export model that is phenomenal. And it's promoted, and they constantly promote export, and their ports are facilitators of trade, and they actually push it. So I mention that purely as an observation, but they took decisive action over the last years to ensure that came to fruition. So what I want to do now is to just talk to you. So I'm going to give anonymity to my British Business Group members who put this information forward, not at their request, but just because I think it's good in terms of protocol. And these are observations, purely observations, not statements. So this is from somebody that manufactures a paper-based product, and they export via a Papa port. And they also export via road. So the first thing that this lady said was that the infrastructure is very bad, unquote. We've then got the cost of diesel, which is stymieing, which is a strange word, but stymieing production. And then the lack of infrastructure on the roads means that any journey takes longer than it would take perhaps in other African countries. When they export via the port, they experience extreme delays due to congestion getting into the port and then congestion inside the port. There are then extensive delays in loading the ship. Using a barge is risky for various reasons, and she didn't touch upon that. And there's also been a massive increase in freight cost. And one of the other things that was highlighted, and as I say, I will emphasize this as an observation, is the lack of positive assistance from the port. And then the other comment was, or the last comment from this person, was constant charges which change without notice. And so that's that. I then move on to another member who has set up a company making, please forgive my pronunciation, a gogoro. And that person was looking at exporting, and then speaking to people with the difficulties of the port, a Papa port. That person said it's simply not worth the effort. So it's made here and it stays here. It's not worth the effort in trying to export. I then move on to another manufacturer, a huge manufacturer here of some goods that I think it makes them these. They manufacture 60% of this particular type of goods in West Africa. So this gentleman said the biggest problems are the lack of infrastructure. And he actually said, if you're speaking, say this, please repair the roads. So he then said, if I then move to a Apapa port, there's the length of time it takes to get containers into the port at Apapa due to long queues. This drives the cost of transportation through the roof, as the drivers or owners charge extortionate prices simply because vehicles are kept waiting at checkpoints where we also have to pay to get in. They know their vehicles will be stuck for a minimum of 2 weeks or several weeks or more. He said, this is to get out product I have made in Nigeria. He said, this increases the cost of inland freight, which makes it impossible for Nigerian manufacturers to compete. We can compete at ex-works level easily, but once you add in transport costs, all benefits are lost. He went on to say that the customers are continually tinkering with HS codes for various reasons, and his logistics team call them business prevention managers. So that was that. One of the things that was put forward—
I need you to round off the response to that question, Stanley, so that we have enough room.
Okay, and then the last thing that was said, that they would like the port to become facilitators. They'd like them to be interactive and actually encourage export and interact with people on a positive basis.
Thanks very much, Stanley. You finally got there in your response. So one of the solutions that we need to look at, whilst we cannot dimension all the solutions today, interactive communication and engagement by port authorities. What we're trying to do is sort of collate some true actions coming out of today's discussions and place it in the right framework for that to go. We know that there's still somewhat work to be done around the congestion at the ports. So that's something that we've picked up from the feedback that you have said. And and of course the roads, which is a major infrastructure, and perhaps if there's a greater focus around the rail network, we would not be very focused, rail and ports. I know in Lagos we've got Lekki ports, we've got Port Harcourt, we've got Warri, and we've got quite a number of ports across Nigeria. Those are some of the other solutions that we need to begin to look at. Let me move very quickly to Mr. Omidiji, who is representing Mr. Bello, and just pick up on my next question as we begin to receive questions from the audience. So you're aware, Mr. Omidiji, the role of innovation, information technology, and digital advancements as disruptors in the global economies. So, how have we then sort of at Nexim transported or adopted technology to enhance or break the barriers to export? I'd be interested to know what you've done in technology, what you're doing, and what you plan to do in that direction. Thank you.
Okay. I am trying to figure, from what perspective that you're coming from. Definitely, we cannot, in today's business, we cannot overemphasize the role of technology. In the last 2 years, we've had to deal with the issue of COVID, which limited movement, physical movement, and so most activities and businesses have to be conducted using technology and online services. So we have structured our businesses in such a way that even now we receive application for our facilities online, and we engage online, and it's only when it gets to that critical stage sometimes that we need to even go and visit the project to take a final decision. So most of our products and activities are available online, and then trying to even take that further into how we create sensitization because part of what we try to do is to, educate the export, community, both exporters and prospective, exporters, on some of the, things they need to know in terms of how to do exports, how to even run, businesses, some of the issues we've been talking about, the barriers to export, the issues, of quality standards and all of that. In the past, what we have done is to, organize sensitization programs, physical programs in different geopolitical zones, of the country. But when the issue of COVID, came up, we then also elevate that to now have, to now develop, the what we call the Nigerian Export Academy. In which case we now have an online, system whereby people can now access, information. We have engaged a lot of resource persons, to produce lectures and teaching aids, which we have uploaded, and then people can go there, and obtain information, about exports in general, and how to even run businesses. So I don't know if that answers your question. Otherwise, if you give me a better perspective.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to, in fact, we were coming more from the angle of an integrated solution in a way that, it's a one-stop shop, which is what you described. You can sort of get in there, you have an end-to-end solution available to our to customers or to exporters to that extent. But I think, the other thing that I wanted us to tease around that is an end-to-end solution with your collaborators. So it's not just Nexim Bank sitting in there, but how do your solutions integrate, for example, with CBN and, for example, with NIPC, et cetera, in a way that it makes it easier for the exporter. I think it was Stephen Cartwright who says, you would find somebody open up his laptop and has 20 windows and is not sure which of, where to go. So I'll leave that with you as a thought process in terms of how we sort of take that forward. Mr. Cartwright, I'd sort of like to pick up with you, perhaps on a different tangent, if you can come on. In 2020, again, based on the statistics that we've seen in there, 6.5 billion pounds of global imports of fruits and vegetables were made in the UK. And I mean, if we compare that figure with the fact that 2.3 billion support was given to African export by the UK government in I think about 2020, 2021. How can Nigerian businesses begin to benefit and tap in to ensure they have increased export to the UK? This time I want practical tips, because I think particularly a lot of our small, medium enterprises will do well with understanding what the practical tips are. You used the case study of Kenya. If there's anything that has been done in Nigeria, that would be welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. I should add that the Growth Gateway program itself has only been up and running for a few months. We've dealt with over 100 specific inquiries from companies, including, for example, from Nigerian tiger nut producers. So quite a few have been in the agri sector. There's been a really diverse number of inquiries, and people are coming any help they can from anywhere. And if you're a smart company, you will of course always explore your widest network. You'll talk to your chambers. I think a really important point is, regardless of what programs can be put in place by governments, and regardless of the many challenges in the last 3 or 4 presenters, often companies want to hear from people that have succeeded through the challenge, and they want to hear from fellow businesses, which is why chambers are so important, I think, because governments can say, yeah, we can help with you, but let's be honest, the infrastructure changes, those things are medium to very long term, and they are clearly quite difficult. I should say, I mean, we as a program have been around for a few months, but are dealing with lots of day-to-day inquiries. We just try and triage them. We talk amongst some experts. Our lead supplier is consulting group. They have extensive reach across the continent. They use specialists, and they're obviously talking to businesses all of the time. There are obviously And I think the other forums are important. There's just been an economic development forum in the UK with your Nigerian trade minister was there, and obviously this discusses policy dimensions. It also indeed looks at market access barriers as well. I know there was a virtual exporters dialogue a few weeks ago, and there's an agri-investment summit coming up in August. I think opportunities, but talking about the problem doesn't make it go away. Absolutely, and I have to say that due to partly the pandemic, but also other issues as well, but particularly the pandemic, the cuts in ODA programs across many countries that we've been working with for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years have had something of an impact, because of course those are some of the elements of those programs are working particularly with smallholders, with female access to, for example, credit, access to finance, access to training. Some of those programs have been pared back a bit, but we are still working very, very closely with any institutions that provide that sort of value add as well. Obviously, since Brexit, I'll mention the Brexit word. It's been mentioned once already. I see that mainly as an opportunity because it means we're not tied down by EU regulations. We're not tied down by anyone's regulations. I mean, quite clearly, UK government has got a very open approach to free trade, and that's borne out by the numerous free trade agreements we're signing. It's borne out by what I mentioned about the developing countries trading scheme, developing the EPAs, the free trade agreement with Kenya, for example. So all of that points to a country that wants to have its borders open and to support. But nevertheless, for example, in the agricultural sector, we've been talking to companies that do face a standards. Not only, and I'm not going to suggest we ever lower our standards, either in Nigeria or the UK, particularly in the food sector, but trying to also meet the specifications of supermarkets, for example, in the UK, which may have their own individual standards, whether it's the Tesco's or Waitrose, etc. So I suppose my one single biggest clue to this is that companies need to start earlier. They need to start the process earlier, be as informed as they can, so that actually they're not going to meet these surprises when they get further down the line, because homework is about making sure when it comes to access to finance that they're talking obviously to some of those that are on this meeting, but others as well. Obviously debt is an issue. We've talked about managing resources if you're a very small company. I would say our main value that we can bring, I mean, not only just UK government, and there are very effective programs we've run in the agriculture sector, but in other sectors as well. And I'm happy to give more information about those. But our main port of call will be how we can integrate and try and make sure that we can just narrow down the time it takes for a company to find out the key steps they need to go. And I've got other links in the presentation that I'm very happy to share going forward.
Fantastic. That's very helpful. I'm going to throw a couple of questions at everyone. So if I can ask that you note it down, because we're beginning to get some questions from the audience. If you can please note them down, and then in order I'll respond. So the first one to you, Stephen, was how can one access Growth Gateway? And I think I can sort of say you can come through the NBCC website, but I think you can answer that question. Let me pose all the questions to you. The second one for you, the second question, in no real order actually, is directed at Nexim. I want to know how SMEs can access the project preparation fund that has been designed by Nexim, and what are the requirements to access the funds? The next question is, what efforts are being made to enhance efficiency in implementing export incentives? And that, I'm sure, it could go to CBN and could also go to Nexim Bank. But I think there's another question that I will sort of kick off with Dr. Mahmood at CBN, and then we can sort of go into responses to those questions. The first one is, I'm sure exporters would like to know about tariffs. How are we incentivizing exports? What is in place to encourage value addition? So that's the first one to CBN. And the next one is, how can CBN effect a market-determined rate to address the challenges of FX inflows, which is really one of the biggest barriers that, so we're going into the stage of actual solutioning. Maybe we will start with you, Dr. Mahmood, on those two questions to CBN. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This is quite interesting. I'm also learning a lot from this conversation. Let me start with the last one, Annie, that you just we just brought in. What is the market best market determined rate in terms of FX inflow? For using the term market means we are looking at demand and supply. And so long as that disequilibrium exists, then you start having that, that distortions you have in the stability of the exchange rate. And then in my earlier intervention, I mentioned the supply side constraints that we have, and the only tool within the central bank is to manage the demand side. Managing the demand side is very costly and is largely not very efficient. We're aware of that theoretically. And so we try as much as possible to throw it to the market. But the market will have to be deep enough, we have to be efficient enough, and what we call the price discovery mechanism in the market must also be very efficient. So, but if you have, a skewed, supply and demand, then you can't achieve that. So central bank will have to intervene, and then that will mean, either being a seller or a buyer in the market to keep the rate going. And every measure that we've mentioned are all towards boosting that supply, because we just find out that that is just the main issue. And I like the issues that Stephen brought up, which include how do we make those that are into the export business learn from those that are successful in that business. This kind of platform where those discussions are done, where people learn how things can be done a lot easier, where people find alternatives to some of the policy or structural constraints that we have, is very, very important. We seeing the problem, identifying the problem persistently will not necessarily make the problem go away, but we need to find solutions to that. And I think we're doing that, only that it's a multifaceted affair, and then all other players in the game must come to speed. So while one is going on very fast in terms of export trade, and from the production side, we need to look at how that is also done. And then I think a lot of issues were mentioned around the port administration, container roads, and whatever. In terms of the infrastructure, which is a key feature that has been emphasized in all this, I also want to mention that the central bank is also doing a lot in this space. I'm sure you're aware of the Infra Corp that was just launched by the president, and this is supposed to be a whole private sector driven vehicle in terms of financing infrastructure, because we've seen that the government cannot do it alone. The government has not been able to do it for the last 4 or 5 decades. So, and the financing gap is deepening, it's widening day by day. Foreign capital inflow is becoming, also more expensive and highly volatile. So there was a need to create that vehicle. It is a 15 trillion vehicle to be financed largely by both multilateral institutions, the ADB, the IFC, the African Finance Corporation, and other major players in that, even the sovereign wealth fund part of it, to raise that funding for that major infrastructure, which includes roads, airports, and port facilities, to take that off government, and then we start seeing, but you need to make those lucrative for the investors in that space. So that will be one of the incentives that I would say we're doing to address some of that. In terms of, and like even the RT200 that we're talking about, the emphasis is more on semi-finished goods. Exporting raw, unprocessed material, the experts are all here, it does not have enough return as when you have some value addition into it, either processing, either drying it. Even if it's cashew, you don't take cashew from the farm straight to the Lagos Apapa port. No, if you're able to dry it, you're able to package it, you're able to meet the UK standard, any other country's standard, even the production process, what kind of chemical fertilizer do you use to, all those things, we need to do it, holistically. And like I said, this exposure is very, very important for players in that space. On the issue of tariff, that is beyond our paycheck here. I think Minister of Trade and other players here are fiscal authority are more into that tariff, but our emphasis has been that the tariff should not be discouraging for export. When we're also saying that one of the tariff is exchange rate, you can technically say that it's also part of the tariff. But what is important is that depreciating the currency is supposed to facilitate export. But when there is no export, then it comes back as imported inflation. So it's bringing whatever is coming in is going to be consumed domestically. It's going to be more expensive, and that will translate to other costs, including cost of transportation input, including diesels and petrol. So we just want to make the exchange rate very attractive for export, because the more naira you need to get a same unit of dollar. If you bring in dollar, then you get more naira, but you need to have something to export. Thank you, Rino.
Thank you very much for that very detailed response. And I'm just going to move on to Mr. Kasuma, because we've not heard his voice a bit. One of the questions here says, how can we bring all the government agencies, NPA, NCS, NDA, NEPC, etc., involved in the trade journey and business community together on a regular basis to discuss and resolve the issues raised, particularly against the port? So it's not a port question, but it's more about collaborations, really.
Oh. Can I answer that, please?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that one has already been taken care of. Like I mentioned, we have an interagency committee which is being chaired by the Vice President under the PEBEC, Ease of Doing Business. All these agencies are represented in that committee, and it's being chaired at the highest level by the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And the committee regularly meets on quarterly basis. So I think that that issue has already been addressed. And in addition to that, almost every government agency, is in one collaboration or the other with another agencies. Virtually, it is interesting when you look at all these agencies, you will see that the law, or the act that sets each agency give them the power, the mandate to collaborate with other government agencies in achieving their mandates. So that is already being done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I hope that there will be greater conversation and engagement between Nigeria Export Promotion Council and CBN in resolving the e-invoicing solution as quickly as we can before we all start feeling the pressure. Yes, excellent. Yes, okay. So perhaps whilst I have you speaking, another question, can one begin an export trade without an export license?
No.
Okay, that's simple answer. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go straight back to Stephen, and perhaps Stanley can also be ready in response to it. So that I had asked for two questions, one on Growth Gateway, access to Growth Gateway, and the other one was on efficiencies, I think it was. So perhaps you can respond to it. What are the processes and requirements of entering the UK markets? That is the regulations and existing controls. So maybe you can answer that as well, Stephen Cartwright. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, in my short presentation, which I sent, my last two slides, one gives some really important links to information. So that's trade with the UK if you're ready to export, how we can help you trade with the UK. So that's in the link of my presentation. And also another link, checking export regulations, taxes and declarations, is also in my presentation, as is a QR code to link to Gov UK, which is the website we're using at the moment, and my inbox is there as well. And just to say that in about 10 days time, we will be launching a website, we call it a campaign, and we're very, very keen to obviously use that as quite an interactive place so we can have more engagement, more case studies, good examples. So we'll be launching that in a couple of weeks' time, and we'll notify the chamber so you can pass it on to your members. But all the information is in the presentation. I will put my inbox into the chat as well. Thank you.
Oh, I was just going to say so, and we would obviously the presentations and information would be available on the NBCC website, so people can reach that. Stanley, anything else to add to that?
Well, just to say, as Stephen has said, the information is there, it's available. But also the UK's agencies, in particular the Department of Industry and Trade, will be glad to assist, and either Stephen or myself can put anybody who needs to in touch with them. And also, if anybody wants to message me directly, we've got people within the BBG that will willingly assist and help.
I think that's very helpful. Thanks for that offer. We're gradually coming to the end of the presentations and the questions. There are quite a number of questions we see on there. For those we're not able to respond to, as we had promised at the beginning, we'll put the responses on our websites. Before we go, I think perhaps one of the biggest things, one question I'd like to sort of ask is, if you had a magic wand, and if you had one real opportunity, and this is going to all the panelists, to actually move the dial and change the narrative on the pressures that exporters are facing, what will that one thing be? And I'm going to start with you, Mr. Tayo Midiji. If you can start from Nexim's perspective, what would be that one thing, great change that would influence and change the dial for you?
Okay, for me, I think we need to begin to change our mindset. Over time, we have stayed too long, in exporting primary products, which has not helped us. Now, we like to give, this example. If you check the statistics, the whole of, West Africa, including Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and I think Cameroon, we contribute about 75% of, the global production of cocoa, which is #1 non-oil exports, from Nigeria. Now, but most of this is exported raw. Now, the global value, for cocoa beans is valued at about $10 billion, dollars. Whereas the market value, of all byproducts of cocoa, chocolate, and other products is valued at about, $200 billion annually. So we have a situation whereby for a product where we are responsible for, 75% of the output, we get less than 5% of the value. So that's, the reason why we preach, that our exporters should begin to see how to move up the value chain. And I will also tie that with one of the questions, because somebody asked, what are the incentives, to assist our exporters to export value-added products. And I think, sometimes, some of the challenges has to do with even establishing the processing plants to be able to add value, to some of our commodities. And this is why we have some of this funding program. The CBN, about 3-4 years ago, launched the 500 billion export stimulation facility, which we are collaborating with them to manage. We have other funding sources. We have partnership with other Exim banks, Afro-Exim, India-Exim, and other Exims in all parts of the world that we can leverage on to access long-term capital to assist our exporters, to establish production plans. So I think we need that change of mindset. There is that tendency for us to go into areas where we want quick returns, and all of that. But that's it's not going to help us much in terms of building this sustainable growth that will create jobs, that we are trying to achieve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's really quite interesting. Mindset change. So I'm just going to move on to Mr. Kasuma. If you can give us your perspective, just one magic wand, what would you like to change, and how are we going to take that forward to move the dial? Sorry, we can't hear you. You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Like my colleague said from Nexim, is the major challenge now is for us to encourage our exporters, to go into value addition. That is the key thing. But even that one has its own challenges. I will give you an example. You mentioned cocoa. Yes, of course, #1 export from Nigeria for a very long time. But you see, some of these markets that we are targeting, that we have been targeting our traditional markets, you know, the EU, UK, and the US, you know, as part of their trade barriers, if you like, you know, have made it difficult, if not impossible, for you to add value. Simply because that when you add value, their companies will be out of business. An example here is, if you take an average chocolate from the US, you will see that it's a blend of 3 to 4 different cocoa powders. The Malaysian cocoa, the Indonesian cocoa, the Cote d'Ivoire cocoa, and the Nigerian cocoa. That is what they blend to make a chocolate. So they will not buy you a chocolate here. They will rather buy your beans, you know, process it, blend it with others. What is the solution? The solution now is for us now to promote intra-African trade. We are a continent of 1.4 billion people, 55, 56 nations. You understand? If we will be able to add value and trade amongst ourselves, then we will now create alternative markets that will buy the value addition, you know, the manufactured products that we will be able to produce amongst ourselves. So the success of value addition here is, as much as you wait and say that you are going to add value and set to a sophisticated market like EU with their rigorous restrictions, which time did not allow me to go into the technical barriers that, you know, they have put deliberately, you know, to continue to be taking our raw materials, you know, is virtually impossible. It will take a generation before you reach that standard. So the key solution here is to promote, you know, intra-African trade through AFTA, where we can trade amongst ourselves. We are, you know, 1.4 billion people is just like saying that we want to access the Chinese market. We are almost the same population, and that is the strategy that China is doing. 55 countries, almost the same population, taking every resources from each country. So the challenge is, yes, add value, but look for alternative markets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So very well said. And I would like to move over to Dr. Mahmood on that note. We're following a theme and a trend here,
Okay. I think that the most important thing here for me is, you know, how we are able to disseminate this information, how training can be impacted on the exporters. Export is not a domestic business. It requires international exposures, it requires familiarity with standards. I know NPIC is doing a lot in this area, and I think others need to, you know, just get this knowledge. There should be a channel, proper channels where you can get this information. This is a very good forum that is doing what we're all elites here and top guys, policy people here. But the practitioners will also have a forum where they can get a lot of this knowledge, training, expertise, you know, telling them options that we have. There are a lot of hurdles, you know, is part of globalization to have those hurdles. It is kept, you know, it's part of our diplomatical protocols in all the countries. So let's not worry too much about that. Let's find ways around it. So mine will be training, exposures, knowledge sharing platforms are very critical for us to achieve this, of which this is one of them. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I can sense a movement already, and the movement is going to be a collaboration within all the players in this room today, all the panelists in this room today, and with the NBCC being the moving force. And if we can actually create that right forum where we've got advocacy as our key grounding on behalf of members, on behalf of the public, just the knowledge sharing, even the amount of what has come out of today's conversation, I think will take us in the right direction as Nigerians and begin to eliminate the barriers. If we're all in the same room, we will get that traction. Thanks very much for that. I'm just going to move over very quickly to Stephen Cartwright. Your thoughts, the one magic wand dial up that will dial us into the next
well, without a doubt, trading it grows the economy, it lifts people out of poverty, it increases livelihoods. So without a doubt, trading is good, but it has to be good trading. I agree with the last couple of speakers. It's important that Nigerian small companies learn from others before they dip their toe into trading First of all, with countries in the region, then definitely across Africa. And of course, we're waiting in the UK, the 6th biggest economy in the world. There are many, many opportunities for Nigerian business, but it needs to be those that are ready to export. So I say, get it ready before you go. Look at our export checklist and decide if you're ready to go, and then talk to the chamber, join the chamber, and then join us in DIT and come and export to the UK when you're ready.
You're a star for promoting the need to join the chambers. Well done for that. And I'm picking up some sound bites here. I'm just going to close out with Stanley. So let's have your last word from you on how we can eliminate the barriers and what would you like to see change. Thank you.
Well, first of all, can I also agree that this has been an excellent forum for expressing ideas and exchanging views? Really very, very positive. Thank you for inviting me and giving me time. A couple of observations. Can I ask the CBN, the Nexim and the Nigerian Export Council to tag and hashtag each other when they're posting on social media and have links on each of their websites? I did an audit yesterday and that's sadly lacking. And in fact, I didn't see a single cross tag to any of the agencies. So what that will help to do is to facilitate and promote growth. And I'd also highly recommend the British Business Group and the Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce on there, and get that done as soon as you can, because that again will facilitate exports. My second recommendation as a direct result of this forum is let's set up a WhatsApp or Telegram group, including the Nigerian Export Council, Nexim, CBN, NBCC, British Business Group, DIT, and of course the Port Authority. So let's use that to drive growth, again to facilitate trade and export. So if somebody highlights a problem, we can get that posted on the group, and all of us as individual facilitators, if we put on and delegate the responsibilities to somebody else on there, can nip the problem in the bud and promote export. So let's make a meaningful change as a result of that.
Wow, wow, wow. What do I say? I mean, some very, very interesting recommendations there from you, Stephen. It was a deliberate question because I'm just going to share some of the sound bites and just think about this, mindset change, value add, promote intra-Africa trade through AFTA, forums, channels for knowledge sharing and expertise, good trading, get it ready before you go. And finally, setting up a WhatsApp group and a hashtag that actually makes sure we can link each other and we can collaborate and we can begin to remove some of the barriers that affect export in the Nigerian sector. On that note, I want to sort of, in my closing, sort of say, it's been an honor. My curiosity on this subject has been answered, and I'm sure that the curiosity of many of our exporters and businesses on this forum has been answered. We've got some great insight on the great work that is being done in CBN, from Alti 200 to Infraco to all the other initiatives. We've got great insight on some of the conversations around value add from the NIPC. We've really got some good insight on what the British businesses in Nigeria are talking about. We've understood what help and advisory is available through through the growth company. Sorry, it just fails me for one moment.
Growth Gateway.
Growth Gateway, beg your pardon, that's it. I knew it was a GG. So quite honestly, there's plenty food for thought for all of us. They're and for those small, medium enterprise businesses, I know there were one or two questions there that I didn't pick or forget, and I apologize for that because I'm also conscious of time. We will make sure that we respond to it. Thank you very much for your excellent and masterly responses, very well articulated. And I think the last comment from Evans very, very, very much says it all. Really, we need to now collaborate positively and with the right energy and in the same room to get things moving. Let's not just speak. Let's not just continue the conversation. Let's actually put some action to it. And I really like that. We look forward to evaluating all the comments that have come through, to the ideas that have flown through from this conversation today. And of course, there would be a formal vote of thanks. But personally, on behalf of I think we have about maybe 150, 130, 140 odd esteemed guests online. On behalf of the NBCC, obviously, from who I support and who I represent, I want to say one thank you to you, our distinguished panelists. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your ideas that have come forward. Before I hand over to our honorary treasurer, Mr. Oyetayo, who will sort of talk to you about some of what the NBC is up to and what we're doing, I think it's important to state the fact that the Advocacy Committee aims to bring together thought leaders, stakeholders in public and private sector on issues that affect Nigerian economy, particularly as they relate to trade and investment. And I do hope that today's roundtable discussion has been a catalyst towards our aspirations. On that note, I want to say a big thank you as we wait to receive the video from our sponsors. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We're waiting for the video. So if the video is not ready, perhaps Mr. Oyetayo can step in and then we can take the video at the end if it's not ready.
The primary purpose and objective of Nexim is to drive non-oil exports. So from the onset, when the bank was set up in 1991, its purpose was to diversify revenue sources for the federal government. We don't do anything that is related to oil. All we do is focus on the non-oil export. We support manufacturing. We support agro-allied products. That is both in the production and also in processing agro-allied products.
you very much. Over to you, Mr. Oyetayo.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Anne, for that excellent program. On behalf of the President, members of Nigerian-British Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank everyone who, for the past 1.5 hours, been glued to the TV, making sure that listening to a very, very interesting program. This program is very highly interesting, and I believe every one of us actually benefited from this program. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Hassan Mahmoud, who is from the Central Bank, the Director of Trade for Central Bank, who have given us an insight of what Central Bank been doing. Sterling Evans from the British Group, Stephen Catworth, the representative of Mr. Aminu Kazuma, who happens to be the representative of the Nexim, and also Mr. Omidiji from the Nexim, and Mr. Aminu Kazuma from NIPC. And now we also thank Anne, who I can call, I don't know whether I'll call her our own Christian Amanpo or Fariza Kari for the way NIPC. And now we also thank Anne, well, who I can call, I don't know whether I'll call her our own Christian Amanpo or Fariza Kari for the way NIPC, who have been participating in this program. Well, thank you very much. And we request you to visit our website, www.nbcc.org, and also follow our social media platforms to know other programs coming up. We have a series of programs we normally do, and for this month, we have programs. So I will request you to check on our website and also we request you to be a member. It's nice for you to be a member. Most of the programs coming up is on the screen, and you'll see it. We're having a program on Learning and Development Week, which we have started, Acquire Skills and Knowledge for Personal and Business Growth. We're starting next week, and we request you to participate. The restructuring in the FCMG sector is coming up on Thursday, May 26th, and we're having Mr. Fola Yesimoju, who will be talking from a Group Managing Director of USC of Nigeria, who will be the one talking to us about that. And that's one is kind of fee participation. So you have the members paying 7,000, non-members paying 10,000. You can easily register through our social media platforms. And now we're also having leveraging technology, digital transformation in agriculture. And that one comes up on Thursday, June 7th. Leverage on to participate in that. So thank you very much for your attention, for your time, and I believe that you benefit from this program. It's a great one for us all. For our Abuja Members Evening coming up on July 22nd, and we would like you to be. And don't forget that our plaza is open for your seminars, for all your activities. We have a very serene where you can hold your event. Just get in secretary. Thank you very much. With the technical crew of the headquarters who are behind the scene, making sure that this program, it's well delivered. Thank you, and bless you. God bless you all.
Thank you, everyone. Well done. That was excellent. Well done. Job well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam President. And thank you very much to all our panelists. I don't know if they're still on. Really grateful for your time and for your insights. Really good stuff. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, all.
And well done, the engine behind the scenes, the Secretariat. Thank you, your headquarters, I keep forgetting. Thanks very much for your hard work behind the scenes and bearing with me.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reno. Very good job. Well done.
You're always a star, a great support. Really appreciate you. Thanks for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.